All right, back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. It's the last show of the week. You know what that means. We got to check in with our boy, the professor, Deniz. First of all, you look great. How are you? Happy holidays. Will you be there on Sunday?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'll be there Sunday. This is just it was a short week between the Monday and Sunday home games, and so I decided to sneak down to Maryland to drop in on some of the family time.
Well, we hope you enjoy that time. We will not take too much of your time, but the people do want to know, first and foremost, playoff scenarios wise for the Eagles in this game. We know where they stand in the overall NFC standings, but
Right.
what are the things that we should be watching, not just for the Eagles, but around the league this weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, just real simple. I mean, the Eagles situation is pretty simple. They lose all tiebreakers to Dallas, right? So the NFC East type magic number is two. The Eagles have to finish with a better record. Obviously, lose the two-way tiebreaker to San Francisco. Lose the 13-4 two-way tiebreaker to Detroit, which means need the Lions to lose a game. Saturday night would be an opportunity for that. Now, if the Eagles and Lions each lose a game and finish tied and the Eagles still win the division, then it goes to strength of victory. If you're interested in that, check my Twitter. Okay, this is not good podcasting. It is very complicated and not clear, like who would win that. Though the Eagles probably would. So let me just give you a quick rooting guide for the weekend. So starting Saturday night, Detroit at Dallas. Now the best result there would actually be a tie, right? Because
Okay.
with a tie, that would allow the Eagles to clinch the division on Sunday. It would also let them control the two seed over Detroit. So both things could happen, but that game would have to end in a tie. There hasn't been a tie in the NFL since
No,
week one of last
no better
year.
time than Saturday night.
Oh yeah, it would be awesome. That would be such an incredible. I mean, the Eagles will win the Super Bowl if that game ends in a tie. I
Well,
mean, like
listen,
it would.
this is like you were way out in front of the Week 18 game from a couple years ago. That the Herbert Raiders game. We're like this game, like this is the tie is very much on the table here. So maybe you getting
Exactly.
out front is a chance that this will happen.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, in that situation, a tie was good for both of the teams playing in the game. In this situation, it would not be good for either of the teams playing in the game. So it was a little different, but in terms of incentives of the teams. But yes, that would be awesome. Now, the second best thing to happen in the game is for Detroit to lose the game, right? Because the Eagles don't need Dallas to lose a game, but do need Detroit. Now, moving to Sunday, 1 o'clock, San Francisco at Washington. Obviously, we'd like San Francisco to lose that game. Eagles still need the 49ers to lose another game to pass them in the standings.
Jacoby
And then,
Brissett at quarterback might make a little bit of a difference.
hopefully. Now, the thing is, they probably won't lose that game, right? Which means that the Eagles would then need them to lose to the Rams the following week. Now, the problem with week 18, as we all know, is that some teams rest players and or don't have anything to play for. And the problem is, if the Rams win and Seattle loses, the Rams will get in the playoffs. They will clinch the playoffs this weekend, which means that they would almost surely rest players the following weekend in San Francisco. They would know they have a playoff game the next week, and the only thing they could be playing for is whether they're the 6 or 7 seed. I don't think they'll care enough about that to play their guys in San Francisco. Not that they're likely to win that game anyway, but so what we have to root for here is we need one of those things not to happen. So rooting for the Giants against the Rams and rooting for Seattle against Pittsburgh. If one of those things happen, the Rams will have something to play for in Week 18. And then the other piece of that is if Detroit doesn't lose, we would need them to lose to Minnesota. And Minnesota will be eliminated if they lose and the Rams win and Seattle wins. And so it would be nice if Minnesota wins on Sunday night against Green Bay, that's Sunday Night Football, so that they stay alive. So it's actually really easy. It's just root for all the home teams: Dallas, Washington, Giants, Seattle, Minnesota. All of them are at home. If you're not sure who to root for in a game, and the Eagles are at home as well, if you're not sure who to root for, just root for the home team. If all the home teams win this weekend, that would be ideal for the Eagles. And for those of you who are hoping, I've seen a lot of this on Twitter. Hopefully, the Eagles can rest their starters and not put them out on the field at MetLife. Lock into a seed. That's just mathematically impossible. Like it can't happen, right? Because if the Eagles win, they'll still be alive for the 1 seed and the 2 seed, which means there will be something to play for. And if they lose, they'll still be alive for the division. The division will still be there to play for, and the 2 seed will be there to play for as well. An Eagles loss and a 49ers win will eliminate them from the 1 seed, but it's essentially impossible for them to be eliminated from the 2 seed. Like 9 different things, like literally 9 different things would have to happen in order for the Eagles to be eliminated from the 2 seed. And you can check my Twitter for what those 9 things are.
Let's say though the Eagles lose, the Cowboys win, and then the Cowboys have at Washington Week 18. You could decide to rest
You're
your
not gonna.
guys, but you're probably not going to. Yeah.
They would put those games at the same time, like that's what they've done in the
Yes.
past, and we can have a whole episode on Week 18 scheduling. But
The
they
bane of your
wouldn't
existence.
make one of those. They wouldn't put Dallas first in that situation. There's some scenario where they could put the Eagles first, but it's unlikely. But they would never put Dallas first and make the Eagles game dead on arrival
Right.
there. So I just don't think like yeah, there's no way you're going to rest your guys if the division is even a
So
possibility.
a quick Week 18 question, because there is some intrigue about what time slot the Eagles would fall. You expect, no matter what, the Eagles to play at the same time as Dallas. Is that fair to say?
Well, not if the division is clinched already.
Sure. Okay. But otherwise,
Yeah.
okay. So what are you expecting schedule-wise Week 18? I know it's results dependent.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's like
There's some concern in the building that the Eagles maybe move to Saturday.
yeah, I think it's unlikely. The Saturday games, if the division is clinched and the Eagles are playing with the hope that San Francisco loses for the 1 seed, there's like a world in which they could put the Eagles on Saturday because San Francisco wouldn't have played yet, and so that game would, you know what I mean? Like there's some world in which that happens, but this is a relatively low Eagles on Saturday likelihood season compared to past seasons. Like there were I was suspecting they'd move the Eagles to Saturday like the year that they did. I don't think that'll happen this time.
All right. Last thing, Deniz, let's just get your temperature on what's going on with the team after the win over the Giants. You said you have some scores you'd like to settle.
Yeah, I just think the reaction to the game by you and Devon on the post game and every other post game thing I saw was quite overblown. I mean, I'm glad Coach Flynn was on yesterday, and kind of spoke a little bit more reasonably about it. Usually, Bo, when you and Zach disagree on something, I mean, I think our audience knows this. I usually agree with you. I mean, and it's because you're right and Zach's wrong usually, and that's like the way that goes. I
True.
think this week, I mean, Zach, thank you. I mean, like, I don't know what's going on. The reaction to that game specifically, I mean, the success rate difference between the two teams was the biggest in the entire league. Like that's a good metric to tell, like if one team dominated the other or not.
But that's
Success
the
rate was
worst team in the league, Deniz.
yeah, but fine. But like, and the Eagles therefore should dominate them and did outside of 3 plays. Like exactly the thing that should have happened. The Eagles offense is being criticized after this game. They scored 33 points on 10 drives. Do you know how many times they did that last year? 3.3 points per drive. How many times did they do that last year?
Twice.
2022. 3 times the entire season that happened. So this would have been the 4th best offensive performance of last year. By the way, that was the 4th time it happened this year. So the defense played great as well. They gave up a field goal and 1 play in the game, and even the special teams like had a great punt return. I mean, like each of those units had 1 disastrous play. And I think if in the context of if this team was still on the win streak, everyone would have been like, "Oh, those were 2 fluky plays," which they still were 2 fluky plays. Like I think the reaction was really overblown. And here I'm going to quote you, Bo. I actually wrote down what you said. You said, I don't have any faith that the team as a whole is ready to win 3 games in a row against good competition. You're saying this about the only team in the league that has literally won 3 games in a row against top 10 DVOA teams this year. They're one of 2 teams in the entire league that have beaten 4 of those top 10 teams. And I just don't understand like what the team would have had to do during the season for you to think that they could turn it on and win a couple of games in a row against good teams.
But I think that we don't need to get into a whole thing. I think you are also overlooking everything that seems to be going on in the building.
See, that's the thing. I'm not overlooking that. I'm deeply concerned by all those things. I obviously follow them all. I'm trying to voice the other side here because I think that those voices have been muted, and all the people who are talking about the vibes and everything are kind of shouting them down, almost as loudly as the crowd shouts down the offense when they're trying to run a play in the stadium. That's a whole other problem. Look, that's okay. As an Eagles fan, I'm very relieved by this. The Eagles have never won the Super Bowl when Bo Wolf didn't declare them to not be a serious contender after a win in December. So it's totally fine.
That is true. That is well said. And Zach all of a sudden can puff his chest out for agreeing with you for once, which means that I will not bother you with a Jonathan Gannon question. We know where you stand there. I don't want you two to ruin this temporary alliance that you have.
Yeah, well, look. I mean, look. I'm gonna link this. I'm gonna link this to Gannon because I think this actually does matter. Like, you keep saying this team doesn't get last year's team's equity, that you dismiss that this team will play well in the playoffs because last year's team did. But you're being unfair. I think you're not giving this team last year's team's equity, right? But you're saddling them with last year's team's expectations, right? So if we do like a quick thought experiment, say last year never happened. This is 2022.
I agree.
So last year, with a playoff loss in Tampa, offseason discussion of acquiring Deshaun Watson and all that nonsense, and then this year happens. Jalen Hurts leads them to a 10-1 start, beating Miami, Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo, almost all in a row, and he's the MVP frontrunner. Would there be talk of how miserable this team is and all that kind of stuff then? Like, I don't think last year is causing this year's team to, like, get too much credit. I think it's the opposite. I think this year's team isn't getting credit because of what happened last year.
I think that is all true, but the problem is, again, you cannot divorce the behavioral ramifications of that stuff from what is going on with the people in the building. They are saddling themselves with those expectations, and I think that is a factor in what is going on.
Because they fired the DC, is that the reason for that?
And because they're chirping back and forth in the middle of the game. I don't know. I am not saying this just based on my own eyes.
Look, I know, and you guys know more than I do about what's going on in the building, and I'd love to, when I'm back in the studio next week, I'd love to hear more about it, and maybe we can have a longer discussion then. But, like, the defense was broken, right? Like, it wasn't playing well. And how about this? Okay, I haven't heard anyone say this, but how about this? If this team had fired the defensive coordinator, and this was the link to get in here, if this team had fired the defensive coordinator in last December and let Vic Fangio start calling the defense, it would have seemed like a panic move, and it would have ended with a parade. I think like, this team realized, like, this defense is broken. It's not going to work. We just gave up 10 straight touchdown drives or whatever it was in 2 big games. And something has to change. Like, the players aren't reacting to whatever the calls are or whatever it is. Like, something had to change. So I think that, like, you see it as a sign that things are broken in the building, but is it a wild stretch to see it as a healthy reaction to things being broken on the field? Not healthy in terms of PR and the way they did it and all that, obviously. Like, it wasn't seriously done. But, I mean, I just think that, the guy right now who's in Arizona, right, was clearly going to be a problem against good teams in the playoffs, and he was. And maybe this year they're preempting that.
Fair enough.
Look, I'm a fan. I'm seeing things with an optimistic view of things, but I just think that, like, I don't think this team should be held to the standard of like the platonic form of a historically juggernaut team. Like look at any other team in the league; they all have problems too, and this team only has to beat those teams. So I just don't see, like, the team that's won more games than any other team in the league, like, over the course of the last 2 years, and more games than every other team this year, other than one. I don't understand why the standard has to be this high. Like, I know they put it upon themselves to some degree. Jalen's been trying to change that, by the way. He went from the standard is the standard to winning is all that matters. But I guess it's not working.
All right. Well, I think it is an internal struggle for Jalen, but just like it is for all of us. The professor, Deniz Selman, thank you so much. We will talk to you. We'll talk to you in the new year.
I'm going to give you a quick preview of Sunday with 7 statistics. You guys ready? Okay. Arizona Cardinals defense, 32nd in DVOA, 32nd in EPA per play, 32nd in success rate, 32nd in series conversion rate, 32nd in points per drive, 32nd in touchdowns per drive, 32nd in yards per drive. I mean, they probably should have hired a defensive head coach, but what can you do?
I think it's happening by design, to be honest with you. Number one, and number two. What about number 3 in DVOA and 70 sacks? Did that occur as well? I'm curious.
Against what is it, Jake Fromm and who's the other guy?
Which side of the ball played more teams ranked in the bottom 10 in DVOA, the offense or the defense last year?
I think, look, Jonathan Gannon.
I'm asking a serious question here because Shane Steichen
I'm being
and
unfair.
Jalen
I'm being
Hurts
unfair.
don't get
I'm being
any like the standard that's held to Jonathan Gannon while he beat bad quarterbacks. These standards not held to the offense for beating bad defenses.
There was enough of a sample size from Gannon playing against good quarterbacks from the year before that we were all confident of what would happen in the Super Bowl. And I plan on retweeting some of my post Super Bowl things in the next couple of days. It was a historically bad performance.
Tweet.
Was pointed this out as well. And I just think it's important to remember that. And also, Jonathan Gannon is the head coach. He's not the defense coordinator, so it's not fair to only he should get credit for the offense as well. That offense is 26th in DVOA, so good job there.
All right. You know what? You guys had such a nice little 5 minutes of being on the same side, and all of a sudden we had to break it down. All right. Thank you, Deniz. We'll talk to you next week in the new year. Good luck to you on Sunday, and thanks for taking the time.
Happy New Year. Looking forward to seeing you.
We all silly like the mayor.